Femme, woman, blue-eyed, platinum blonde hair, fair or pale skinned, wearing glasses, young, serious, has nystagmus, which is rapid back and forth eye movement.
Hi, my name is Katie Carroll. I'm your subject matter expert on membership in organizations, boards, and committees. I'm qualified to talk about this because, frankly, I've served in many organizations, not just as a member, but often as an officer. I've been president, vice president, treasurer, secretary. I've chaired many meetings. I've taken minutes, taken notes, reported to boards of directors, and accomplished many other tasks associated with being an involved member of an organization. I hope you've taken the time to look at the module that I've written out for you, and in these videos I'm just going to share my thoughts about some things that I want you to know as an emerging leader about becoming involved in an organization. So I'm going to start us off with two thoughts. It's a little bit of organizational philosophy, and it's going to be a little bit meta, but that's okay, because I think these two thoughts are really key for you to being an effective leader in whatever organization you decide to be involved with. First, knowing the mission. No matter what your role is in an organization, you might be a member, a committee chair, the president, you might even be staff. It is incredibly important for you to know the mission of the organization without having to look it up. Why do I say this? Because when you think about it, every action of the organization should be directed to advancing the mission or achieving the goals that the board of directors, the steering committee, the leadership have laid out for the organization. If you're not directing your energies and your actions towards those goals, there's a mismatch in the work that you're doing and what you're trying to achieve. Very often, this is because we lose sight of the mission or, get caught up in the day-to-day responsibilities. There might also be a mismatch. Perhaps your organization's mission or goals have changed over time. That's okay. But you might want to do some strategic planning to redefine what your goals are so that you're achieving what you want to achieve and that you are seeing the results that you want to see. I'm going to give you two examples of this point about knowing the mission, how important it is. One example comes from an organization that I was a member of for a very long time, and while I was a member, they conducted a national campaign. This was a national organization for membership. The goal of the campaign was to ensure that every member felt comfortable sharing the mission and the philosophy of the organization in about a 2-minute summary, almost like an elevator pitch. This achieved several benefits for the organization. It created this sense of cohesion among the membership. It reminded us why we were there and what we had in common. Perhaps even more importantly, it allowed us as members, it gave us the tools to share about the organization with others. So when people asked us, what do you do? We had that answer ready. And having that answer ready could mean the difference between getting a new member or not getting a new member, getting a financial donation or not, creating a new partnership. A lot rides on being able to describe what you do, why it matters, and what you're doing to achieve that mission. A second example of this knowing the mission idea I see in another organization of which I'm a member. It's a very small group, and whenever we meet, we actually start the meeting by reading the mission. And this may not be for everybody, but I see tremendous benefit in it because it reminds everybody what the purpose of the group is and really sets the tone for the rest of the meeting so that everyone's on the same page in terms of why we're there, what we should be focusing on next, and to make us think about whether we're taking actions to achieve the mission of the organization. The first point that I made about organizations generally is the importance of knowing your mission. The second point I want to make is pretty closely related to the first point. And the second point can be summed up by the sentiment: the goal of any organization should be to disband as quickly as possible. So that sounds pretty strange, but let me explain what it means. It means that you and your organization should be striving to achieve your mission in a timely and effective manner. And if you do that, then you've achieved your mission and there's no need for the organization to continue to exist. This isn't to say that organizations can't continue to exist for a long time. Many do. Some change their mission over time, or some have an enduring mission that continues to be relevant. One example of this would be a professional organization. So I happen to be involved in professional organizations for lawyers, and as long as lawyers exist and we can benefit from professional development opportunities offered by bar associations, then there is a legitimate mission and reason for bar associations to continue to exist, and that's why you see them last for so long. If you aren't striving to achieve your mission in a timely and effective manner, then you might find yourself spending time and energy on things that aren't directly related to your mission. In my work with advocacy organizations, there's this phenomenon that we call mission creep. Mission creep occurs when your organization is presented with the opportunity to work on issues that might very well be related to your mission but aren't directly related to your mission. And so you might take up these opportunities and find yourself working on campaigns that don't go towards your organization's mission. And so you have to think critically about how you spend your time and energy. And this is very important, especially when your organization relies on volunteers and you have to make important choices about how you spend your time and energy. You don't want to be spreading yourself too thin or working on things that don't go towards achieving your organization's specific mission. This module of Out of the Margins is focused on membership and leadership roles. As you should have picked up from the written materials, it's incredibly important to understand what your responsibilities are when you take on a specific role within an organization, and then to also understand what your expectations should be of people in other roles. So I'd like to highlight some good examples of what organizations that I'm involved with have done to make it easier for members to understand the role of committees or specific officers or other roles. So here's my first example. This is a one-sheet document, front and back, created by the New York State Bar Association. I'm holding it up here. On this one side, there's a header in red, which reads NYSBA, Structure, and Governance. And then down the sheet, we have paragraphs focusing on different parts of the organization. So starting with the House of Delegates, Executive Committee, specific officers, President, Vice President, specific committees, and sections. So I wanted to highlight this because this presents information in language that is plainer than what you would find in the organization's bylaws, which would be probably more difficult for understand and less accessible to the general membership. This makes it easier to understand how the organization is structured and what the responsibilities of, for example, the executive committee and specific officers are. On the reverse side of this sheet is a chart, which I think is also incredibly useful as a tool to help members understand their roles and responsibilities. So this page is called Governance at a Glance. Along the horizontal axis, we have different tasks or things that have to happen to achieve a certain, to fulfill a certain task. And then along the vertical axis, we have different things that a section in the organization might want to do. So let me give you an example. For instance, your section or committee within the organization might be interested in changing its dues structure. So saying that every year a person in that committee would have to pay $75 instead of $50. So on this chart, you would find the along the vertical axis, modifying the section dues structure. And then going along horizontally, there is a checkbox under Finance Committee approval. So in this instance, if you wanted to change your dues structure, the one thing that your committee or section would absolutely have to do would be to get approval from the Finance Committee. I'll give you one more example using this chart. So say your committee wants to change its budget, so doing a more comprehensive change in your finances. So in this chart we have annual section budget is one of the tasks that you can do as a committee, and then there are checks in the boxes under NYSSBA Executive Committee approval, House of Delegates approval, and Finance Committee approval. So the three things that you would absolutely have to do to change your committee's budget would be to get approval from those three bodies in the organization. So in a larger organization like NYSSBA, a chart like this is incredibly helpful to understanding the roles and responsibilities within committees. One more resource that I'm going to share that I think does a good job of laying out roles and responsibilities is actually a statement of agreement for a council, and this particular organization has each council member that is appointed sign this document saying that they agree to all of the terms in the document. So I'm holding up a paper here. It's black text on white paper, and it is one sheet front and back. The title of the document is New York State Independent Living Council, or NYSILC, NYSILC, Statement of Agreement Council Member Contract. And in this contract, there are several clauses that describe what council members are responsible for. So I'll just highlight a couple. This contract says that as a council member, I would be responsible for the overall fitness of the organization. I am legally responsible, along with other council members, for this organization. I am fiscally responsible for the organization. I will represent the organization and act as an ambassador to NYSILC as best that I can. And then there are other requirements such as attending 75% of all council meetings in a year. So this very clearly lays out the what should be expected of council members and what they need to do to be successful. Next, I would like to address some of the considerations of those of us who find ourselves running a meeting. So presidents, vice presidents, chairpersons, or maybe the duty just fell to us on a particular Tuesday to help run a meeting. In the written materials, I provide a very basic sample agenda that you should use and edit to serve the needs of the committee, board, or organization that you're working with. I would like to present an alternative to that basic agenda because I think it does a good job of highlighting that certain work needs to be done before a meeting begins. So I'm going to hold up this one sheet of paper, which is one-sided. It is entitled Meeting Agenda. There are spaces for the meeting name, date, and time, and then the rest of the sheet is a chart. It is broken down along the vertical axis into numbered topics. So the topic, the time allotted in each topic, the purpose, and the leader, and then that's repeated down the line. So topic 1, topic 2, topic 3, and then along the horizontal axis we have preparation and proposed process. I'm going to give an example of when this type of setup might be particularly useful in a committee meeting. Perhaps you have a decision to make, a task to do that really has to get done at a particular meeting. So for instance, let's say that your committee has to, is planning an event and you have to pick a theme. So under this type of agenda setup, you would have time allotted, let's say 20 minutes for voting on a theme for a fundraiser event. So 20 minutes, the purpose is to settle on a theme, and then the leader is maybe the point person who's responsible for overseeing the logistics of this event. Preparation. So this might involve in the meeting announcement that some information from the point person about some proposed themes that the committee members should consider before the meeting begins, so that they have an opportunity to weigh the pros and cons, maybe come up with their own variations on the theme, but get them thinking about this topic before the meeting even begins. So then you have the meeting, and the proposed process might be that you spend maybe the point person whose job it is to work on this event to spend 5 minutes just outlining the goal of the event and explain some of their proposed themes that they provided ahead of time, and then maybe the second part of the process would be 10 minutes allotted for discussion of the various themes, for people to share their ideas about the pros and cons of different themes, and then maybe the final 5 minutes goes to actually having that vote and determining the consensus of the committee on what the theme should be. So again, I think this type of agenda setting is very useful when you want to make sure that there's some thought and work put in before a meeting happens, so that the meeting itself can be more efficient and effective. In the additional resources segment of the written materials, there's a link to the community toolbox of the University of Kansas, which I highly recommend that you look at to really build your knowledge of how to work in a campaign or an organization to effectively achieve your mission, and do so in an inclusive, accessible, strategic process. One of the resources of the Community Toolbox at the University of Kansas is this booklet, which I'm holding up. It is mostly a blue cover with various stock photos around the outer edge of individuals just looking into the camera. Some of them are disabled. It's a diverse set of individuals, and the title of the booklet is Your Action Planning Guide for Promoting Full Community Participation Among People with Disabilities. So this particular resource focuses on people with disabilities, but I would say it really works for any population that you plan on serving or working with. And I want to highlight a piece of this resource that I think really effectively summarizes the things that a good president, chairperson, campaign leader, any leader within an organization should strive to provide when supporting a campaign. And I think this applies as well to just running a meeting of your committee, your board, your organization. So within this booklet on pages 7 and 8, we have overall tips on planning. And so they have several. One is to be inclusive. Good planning seeks out key players with diverse viewpoints. That we can't underscore this enough. Achieving diversity and inclusion needs to be an active process. You should be actively seeking out diverse viewpoints. We cannot assume or become lax in our responsibility to ensure that our organization achieves goals of including everyone, including marginalized populations, people that we don't normally hear from. So that first point is incredibly important. Second, the guide says, regarding managing conflict, if the group is effective in attracting diverse views, conflict among members may result. And so you want to think about this as a leader within the organization. When you're running a meeting, you need to be prepared to help the group manage conflict. I want to throw out there the idea of when you're debating a topic, whether you should do something, support something, anything like that, use the method of asking for pros and cons. And this helps kind of get around individuals sharing the same sentiment over and over again. Ask for a pro, then ask for a con. Ask for people to actively manage the conversation so that both sides are heard and that you are opening up the opportunity to hear all the different reasons why or why not. Don't be afraid to push back a discussion to the next meeting. Give people time to think about a topic before coming to a conclusion. You might want to elevate conflict to a higher level. So say it's a conflict within a committee, maybe go to the board to see if it can provide assistance in addressing conflict. Be creative in how you go about this. Next, the booklet is telling us to use brainstorming rules. Group facilitators must avoid making judgments about ideas and suggestions. It's a good leader ensures that different viewpoints and ideas can be safely shared in a supportive environment. So even if you don't go with a particular idea, the idea that different ideas can be put out there makes your organization, your committee, your board stronger. Be efficient. Planning meetings must be efficient, starting and ending on time. So this gets at having an agenda, understanding what you need to accomplish in a particular meeting. It doesn't help anybody to come to a meeting and then having to catch people up or figure things out in the moment. It's good to plan ahead, ensure that people have the right information, background information on what will be discussed, what needs to be voted on, things like that, so that you can have a really effective meeting that can end on time. Now, the last 2 points that the guide makes are communicate products of planning and provide support and encouragement. Regarding providing support and encouragement, you should provide support and encouragement throughout the process of planning. Good planning takes time and usually requires months to produce a detailed plan of action. So again, this is about really supporting the members of your organization so that you can be effective. Maybe it's checking in with members between meetings, ensuring that individuals have the support they need, that they have the accessibility that they need. It takes a lot to be involved in an organization. Many of us are volunteers, and having that support and encouragement really makes all the difference when it comes to being committed and wanting to continue to be involved in an organization. I want to actually end on the idea of communicating products of planning, because this is about the continuity and ensuring that you communicate what you have accomplished and what you need to get done in the future. So we're going to end this video segment talking about communicating products of planning. Let's wrap up by talking about action items and action steps. Let's say you've just finished a really productive board or committee meeting. You've made some great decisions, there's some really great input and debate took place, and now you've ended and you feel really accomplished. What comes next? What comes next should not be the next meeting of your board or committee, because work has to be done, and that work that has to be done is your set of action items or action steps. Being able to communicate action steps is important because you need to, one, identify who needs to accomplish what, by what time, and also it is helpful to be able to gauge just how effective you are and what you've accomplished looking back. So in my personal experience being a member of many different organizations, I find that it is incredibly helpful to have action items or action steps included with meeting notes or meeting minutes. Because it isn't enough that you have this record of what went on in the meeting. People need to know what they have to do next and what they have to prepare for before the next meeting of the board, the committee, or the organization. So let's say, for instance, during a meeting, Joseph volunteered to go to a particular venue or set of venues to get prices on holding an event at those venues. Let's say that before the next committee or board meeting, the advocacy working group is going to meet to make a decision about the next steps in a campaign. So that has to happen, and we'll say that Jamila is the chair of that working group, and so Jamila has the responsibility for ensuring that that meeting takes place. And then finally, let's say that Jerry has volunteered to chair the next board or committee meeting, and so Jerry is responsible for writing the agenda and circulating it before the next meeting. All of those things are action items, and it helps keep track of who's responsible for what and what has to get done. I'm going to close by highlighting one page in the resource booklet that I just shared with you from the University of Kansas. And this is a chart near the end of the book. It is entitled Action Steps for Identified Community or Systems Change. And this chart is kind of like a formalized way of organizing your action steps or action items. It might be a little bit much to do something as involved as this, after a meeting. So this might be more of a strategic planning document to help identify some of those larger action items that has to take place. But I'm going to go through the chart and just describe what it has here. So really this is just, we have the one horizontal axis, and each column we have actions, by whom, by when, resources and support needed, potential barriers or resistance, and then finally communication. So in the action column, what needs to be done, very simply. And then in the next column, by whom, who's responsible for taking that action, by when, by what date will the action be done. Next column, resources and support needed or available. And so here we would put what financial, human, political, or other resources are needed, what resources are available. In the next column, potential barriers or resistance, what individuals and organizations might resist and how. And then finally, communication, what individuals and organizations should be informed about these actions. So thank you so much for joining me in this module. I hope you've learned a lot about being a member or fulfilling a specific role in an organization. I'm so glad that you are taking the time to learn about how to be an effective leader in an organization. Doing so can be incredibly rewarding. It does require work and persistence and education, but again, it can be incredibly rewarding, and you should know that you have mentors out there, tremendous resources such as this Out of the Margins program. And please feel free to reach out if there's any support that I or other of the subject matter experts can provide to help you in your journey as a leader in your organization.